Now, Eric says that he thinks this is the court moving far to the right. But this is a 9-0 Supreme Court decision. We don't see those all that often. So I'm just going to give you my kind of bird's eye view. I don't know if it's a conservative or right-leaning move by the court as much as it's really a legal no-brainer that the president enjoys broad authority on these issues of immigration.
I used to teach constitutional law before I became Secretary of State, and I think the constitutional arguments against the ban are really weak. I mean, they're totally unprecedented arguments. And then on the statutory argument against the ban, it's a pretty weak one, too, the way the Supreme Court has traditionally interpreted those statutes to give the executive a lot of authority. So I'm not surprised that it's 9-0. And the other thing I would point out is something some people haven't caught on to yet. The Supreme Court won't hear the case until October, and they won't decide the case till November at the earliest. So that 90 days is going to go. That full 120 days on the refugee ban is going to go, or the pause. And so
it might be moot.
It might be almost moot. And the exception that the court carved out was already sort of in the executive order in the first place. It had an exception.
2.0.
In 2.0 and in 1.0. There had an exception for cases of extreme hardship, which would be people who had family in the country. So I think it's a really big victory for the president. And one other quick point. For the country as well, one thing I've written about recently is that our refugee program has become a conduit for terrorists. Just since the original World Trade Center attacks in '93, we've had about 30 major terrorists use the refugee program to stay in the country or to get into the country.
Now, Ari, obviously there have been some examples of that for sure. We know that, but there are also refugees that really are just seeking safe haven here. What is your take on how to reconcile those two realities?
There is a statutory argument for what the court has done, but there's also a clause in that very Immigration and Naturalization Act that the court is going to cite. And that clause trumps the earlier law, and that says you cannot discriminate nor use preferential treatment based on national origin and place of birth. That is a statutory argument.
And that's one of the reasons, by the way, Ari, that preference for Christian minorities was taken out for 2.0.
Exactly, and also place of birth. People from Iran, Sudan, Syria, and so on and so forth, Yemen and Somalia, that targets their place of birth and national origin. In addition to that, there are constitutional elements here: due process, equal protection, and the Establishment Clause. But the bigger scheme of things is this. Let's just go back 65 years ago. Can you imagine not admitting Albert Einstein? Can you imagine not admitting people who were deemed to be troublemakers, to be outside agitators
we do
to this
realize
country?
This is a temporary travel ban while we figure out how our vetting system is so that we can reopen the immigration status, not only to refugees, but also people who want to come over on visas. We're trying to make it a safer place, Ari. We're not saying, no, Albert Einstein and the likes can never come here. He is just trying to say, until we're positive that we can close loopholes in the vetting system, we're going to pause it.
And which is what he's trying to do, and we all know what he's trying to do, is trying to appeal to some of the most hardline elements within his own party. The travel ban is not going to solve any of these issues.
It's not a ban. It's a temporary moratorium.
If you're going to have ideological tests, if someone is an ISIS sympathizer, he or she can very easily lie through those interviews and so on and so forth.
I think there are a lot of Americans outside of the hard base that are concerned with the fact that you have Attorney General Sessions saying that there are 300 refugees that are in active FBI investigations for terrorist-related activities or concerns. And mind you, too, these countries are either safe harbors of terrorism or state sponsors of terrorism. So I think there are a lot of Americans outside of his base that are generally concerned given those facts.
Well, I'm one of those people outside the base, and I have
like Emily right here.
Right outside the base. And I do have real concerns about national security, though, to your point, Lisa. And so some of the argument is that this travel ban doesn't necessarily make us safer, Chris. That's at least what I believe the Fourth Circuit determined. But then, you know, some of these places, if the president can make the argument that this is truly a national security issue, then I don't think I agree with you. There's not very much challenge that's going to circumvent that. I think, though, what I see from this court, tell me what you think about this prediction, the burden has shifted. This will not be about the president proving that it's actually a national security interest. It will be about opposition proving that they're going to have to prove that this is discriminatory in its intent.
It's not even that. He doesn't have to prove he's going to be right about it anymore.
No, that's what I just said.
Now, what he needs to do is
he doesn't have to prove
all he has to do is prove it's constitutional.
That's what I'm saying. The burden has shifted. He doesn't have to prove it's that anymore. I agree, Eric, but the opposition will have to prove that it has an president, discriminatory intent is what Ari's argument is.
You know, in legal terms, the burden hasn't shifted, but in sort of practical terms,
well,
yes.
Public opinion terms,
in public opinion, because they now kind of know that the Supreme Court is very skeptical. In the short opinion, they showed some of the reasons they were skeptical of the Fourth Circuit and the Ninth Circuit. And on the statutory argument, the president has clear authority. The Fourth Circuit said, well, you have to show that it's good for the country to us on the judiciary. And what the statute doesn't say the president has to make a showing to anybody. It's in his view, as chief executive, is this safe for the country?
Do not lose sight of the fact that this was a 9-0 victory for Trump.
Well, this is not a 9-0 vote by the Supreme Court making a decision about a case that will be binding. They said, guess what, we're going to look at this. And guess what? 3 of the most conservative justices in the court, Alito, Gorsuch, and Thomas, actually dissented.
Because they wanted it to go further.
Right. Usually, exactly. But they wanted to say, this is it. It's over. Just give the president carte blanche. But usually these opinions are about a paragraph or 2 paragraphs long. This was a 16-page decision or non-binding decision.
But
that means it's a very complex issue.
At least 3 liberal judges did not vote against.
Which is, to my point, Eric,
did not vote against
I don't think it's
the travel temporary ban in place for now.
Right, which I think proves my point. I don't think it's them being further to the right as much as it's just not that political of an issue. It's just pretty constitutional.
But how do you explain the Ninth Circuit and the Fourth Circuit?
Well, for them it was. Unfortunately, no, really, for them, for the Ninth Circuit, yeah. But the High Court, thankfully, I wipe my brow, is being a little better than that.
Thank you. I agree with that.
And I would just add that, to Ari's point earlier, it's not a political thing that the administration did in issuing this ban in the first place in January. If you look at, for example, Syria, the previous administration had been granting 93% of Syrian refugee applications. This is at the same time that it's Syrian so-called fake refugees who are going in and detonating bombs in Europe and driving vehicles into people in Europe. And so clearly 93% was a little too high. And so we have to figure out a way of separating out the true refugees from those who are claiming refugee status.
But it has certainly become a political issue, because you've seen this. This is sort of one of the cornerstones of the resistance movement, because this is emblematic to them of, racism, xenophobia, whatever else that the president has been accused of and was accused of during the campaign as well. So this has certainly become, a political battleground, if you will. And so I think that also adds to the heaviness of this and whatever the Supreme Court's decision ends up being.
We have a big refugee program problem. Not refugee problem, refugee program problem. Once we vet them, or let's say 18 to 24 months, whatever it takes, we let them come in, and then we don't follow them. Once they're assimilated into whatever societies they are, communities, then they're free to go. So there's literally a period of time where we keep an eye on it. Maybe it's a year or so. I'm not sure, Chris.
Depends on the case. Some go for many years.
And then we let them go.
And you just made my point, unlike Europe.
That scares me. And that's why this 120-day moratorium is not a bad idea, to make sure that we really want to do that.
I am all for vetting. My parents and I moved to this country. We waited for a green card. We came here, and look at where I am now.
On Fox News, that's good.
Well, that's okay.
At this time, 5 p.m., just enjoying the day.
Yes.
Exactly. So, but let's look at the facts. When immigrants or refugees leave Syria to go to Europe, all they have to do is to cross a non-existent European Union border, and they get to the European Union. We don't have that problem here. We have 2 oceans protecting us. 18 to 24 months.
There's 4 sides, though. Well, we have 2 oceans, but there's a north and a south.
Right,
they can walk right across
few refugees go to Guatemala
border.
and cross up to Mexico, come out here. But again, 18 to 24 months is what it takes. They have to go through a DOD interview, Department of Homeland Security interview, background check by the FBI and the State Department.
Is there an opportunity for terrorists to come through, Syrian refugees, terrorists or not, to come through our southern border?
Yes, absolutely. So there's 2 halves to this program. There's a refugee program where you're abroad and you get the status there. But a lot of people claim asylum, and that is they come in illegally across the Mexican border. They're smuggled in by the same people who smuggle in people who are from Mexico. And then once they're here, they claim asylum, and it's a very similar standard, a similar program. You get the same benefits of a refugee, and they too can just disappear into the fabric of the country when their asylum claim is denied. So we have to make sure we stop people at the front end where there's any question at all that this person isn't really a refugee. This is a person using the refugee program as a cloak to get in.
Okay, we definitely have a vetting problem, Eric. I agree with you there, and I look forward to us legally and constitutionally remedying that. It's going to be excellent. So coming up.